How's it going, guys? It's CoolSportsGuy here. I am going to be just alone for today, so bear with me. Hopefully, this is as solid as the ones with me and Tom or Jose are. Never really done it by myself, so wish me luck with all of the behind the scenes stuff. But today I will be making the picks by myself, like I said. So it might be a little bit quicker of a video, which is fine. It's only gonna be my point of view, so I know it's not the best thing. You don't get those two sides whenever me and Tom disagree. But we'll make the most of it and just get right into the picks. I did also make the slides, so I made them kind of last minute. So hopefully there's no mess ups on that end either. So for the first game that we have on the slides here, we have the Bills at the Dolphins. Which for Tom's pick, he went with the Buffalo Bills. Makes sense. I can't speak for him, but the Bills are a pretty good football team. Jose also with the Bills, and me, I went with the Bills as well to make it a triple. Again, I can't speak for them too, but I can speak for myself. I think the Dolphins are a very good football team. I think they have a case for being one of the top seeds in the AFC. They were a lot better. I thought they were going to be good going into the season, but they're a lot better than I thought they would be. Tua, I'm not going to jump the gun and say Tua's there just yet, but Tua looked really good week 2. I know week 1 he was still shaky, had some bad throws, bad decision making, missed some open guys, but in week 2 he looked a lot better. He did throw 2 interceptions, but he threw the ball 50 times, I think. You're going to throw interceptions when you throw the ball that much. It's just bound to happen. But he looked good. The Dolphins offense as a whole looked good. But the Bills haven't been close. And I know they haven't played the Ravens or anything like that. They did play the Rams, who haven't looked great this year. But one of the reasons the Rams haven't looked great this year is because of the Bills game. And the Bills, wiped the floor with them. Wasn't even close after the first half. And then in week 2, they play the Tennessee Titans, who also haven't looked great this year. And a big part to do that is because they played the Bills and they got blown out. I think even the backups for both teams were in by the third quarter because the Bills ran away with this game so easily. The Bills, as of now, basically until they lose, I'm going to keep picking them to win. Is just how my viewpoint on it is. They look unstoppable. They're blowing out every team they play. The Dolphins is probably the biggest test at this point, given because we don't really know what the Rams are because it's so early into the season. The Dolphins look really good. But I'm going to go with the Bills on this one. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a good game. But Buffalo at this point just looks unstoppable until they show me otherwise. For Bengals at Jets is the next one. These teams both haven't looked great. The Jets, I really like Zach Wilson, and I think once he's back, they'll look a lot better of a team. But, Joe Flacco, he's a little bit past his prime, so he's not the best quarterback to go out there and win you games. But Garrett Wilson looked really, really good against Cleveland last week. And the Jets, that comeback speaks for itself. Comebacks, I know they happen often, but it takes a lot of heart for a team to not just throw in the towel when it gets to that late in the game and you're down 2 scores. And they came back, and the Browns, I don't think, are a great team. They're pretty middle of the pack, decent at best. But the Jets came back with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco had a great game. I'll give him the credit there. But the Jets still don't look great. The Bengals probably look even worse. Week 1, they played Mitch Trubisky and the Steelers, and Joe Burrow threw 4 interceptions in the first half, had another fumble on top of that. And even last week, their defense didn't play bad. They were going against Cooper Rush. It's not that hard, but their offense only put up I don't remember the exact score, but it was in 14 to 16 points, something like that. They're going to have to get something going. You have a star-powered offense. You're going to have to score more points than that, or it's going to be ugly every week. With that being said, I did go with the Cincinnati Bengals. I just trust Burrow. Even after this ugly start, I do trust Burrow more than I do Joe Flacco. And the supporting cast of the Bengals is better than the Jets. I think, I've said this before, I think the Jets, when they get Wilson back this season, will be a better team, and especially in the future, they have so much potential all over that team. I think the Jets are going to be a very, very good team for probably a quite a long time if they, if Zach Wilson turns out what I think he can be. I think Robert Saleh is a good coach. He has shown that he can be a good coach. It basically all relies on the quarterback, and if Zach Wilson's the answer, they're going to be a good team for quite a while. Tom also picked the Cincinnati Bengals, and Jose also picked the Cincinnati Bengals, which I put the slides together, so you'll see quite a trend that a lot of us have the same picks for quite a few games. So just throwing that out there. For the Raiders at the Titans, to just kind of recap how their seasons have went, the Titans looked ugly against the Giants, and the Giants, me and Jose kind of talked about in the Thursday episode. The Giants look pretty good, and they have like a very easy schedule. I think that they could make a push for a playoff spot just given how weak the NFC is. But the Titans, they lost to the Giants, but that I don't want to say is a gimme, but I feel like they should be the better team there if they want to be a competitive team. And last week they got stomped by the Bills, which I don't want to discredit them too much because, the Bills kind of look like they're going to be doing that to everyone and for a while. But the Titans haven't looked good. Ryan Tannehill hasn't looked awful, but, he ended the season really bad, and I lost a lot of confidence in him from that. But Derrick Henry hasn't really looked like himself, which is the bizarre thing to me. He's going to have to get it going if they want any chance of being a competitive team. As for the Raiders, week 1, they did lose to the Chargers, but, the Chargers, I think, are one of the best teams in football. They are my Super Bowl pick. So I'm not going to, throw them under the bus completely for something like that. But then last week, I'm not high on the Cardinals this year. I've made that very, very clear. I think that they're like a 7, 8, 6, somewhere in that range win team. And the Raiders had I want to say it was like a 23 or 24 nothing lead. And somehow they had one of the worst collapses I've ever seen. And the Cardinals came back and won that game, which I will credit the Cardinals. That was very impressive. But the Raiders, it's just not, that's not something you can do if you want to be a team to make that playoffs in the AFC this year. Like, the AFC is stacked. And I know there's teams like the Broncos who are disappointing, but there's also teams that are randomly looking very good. So you're going to have to try and keep pace, and an 0-2 hole to start the season is not a very good look. And Devontae Adams has looked pretty good, and I think their offense has been solid. I don't know if they're just not putting it all together. They're not gelling well. I did say I was very low on Josh McDaniels as a hiring, but I don't even want to say it's really his fault that they've lost like this. I know in the game against the Cardinals, I got to watch the end of the game and into overtime. And Hunter Renfrow fumbled twice on the overtime drive, which that you're going to lose if your receiver keeps fumbling like that. So it wasn't pretty. But with that being said, Tom picked the Las Vegas Raiders, and me and Jose also picked Las Vegas Raiders. I know I kind of clowned on them for a minute right there, but I still think that they're the better team than the Titans. I think Derek Carr is going to turn it around. I'm really high on him. I know Tom is as well. But Derek Carr is going to get it. He's going to get it fixed. I know the new coach isn't. It takes time to adjust sometimes when you get a new coach and everything like that. But he has so many weapons. I don't see Derek Carr not turning it around. And the defense, I don't think was bad. They didn't allow that many points to the Cardinals last week. And then under the Chargers, they didn't allow a ton of points or anything like that. And it was against, Justin Herbert. So I still have some confidence in them. Their shot at the playoffs is looking more and more dim if they keep losing. But if they get a win here, I think that gives you some more confidence in them, and you can see them bounce back. So, yeah, like I said, I do have the Raiders winning that one. Next up, we have Saints at Panthers, which for those of you who don't know, me and Tom actually went to the Buccaneers at Saints game last week, which I want to give a shout out to Saints fans. I've been to a few games. I've been to the games at in Houston, in Chicago, and this was my third ever stadium to go to, which was in New Orleans. And the atmosphere for that game was next level, the most insane thing I've ever been to. It was, even though we were Bucs fans, I was wearing a Brady shirt, and Tom's a big Brady guy. They were super funny. They kept making jokes to us. It was an all around fun time. They get really into the game, and unlike anything I've ever seen before. I know this is talking about their fans, not the team, but I just wanted to point it out. It was just so much fun. Even after the game, the Bucs won. A lot of them kept walking up to us, and we're like, "Oh, you guys got this time. Good luck for the rest of the season," that kind of thing. And that's still a division rival, which I thought was super cool. But as for the players' point, I thought the Saints played pretty well until the very end of that game. Their defense I know they always do well against Brady anyways, but their defense looks very, very solid. And then they ran the ball really well against the Bucs defense, which is known for stopping the run. I think Winston, he'll have his bad games. That's kind of what you expect. That's what he does. But if Winston can play like up to his standards that I think he can, I think that they'll be a successful team, and they definitely will make a playoff spot. The Panthers, I'm very high on Baker Mayfield. Not very high. I think Baker Mayfield is a quarterback who's capable of winning you games and could be a franchise guy. But I think Matt Rule is probably the worst coach in football. I think it's a toss-up between him and Nathaniel Hackett at this point. Maybe Cliff Kingsbury sneaks in there somewhere, but I do not like Matt Rule. I think he's the wrong choice at head coach, and I don't know how he didn't lose his job last offseason. I don't know. The Panthers, I think they have quite a bit of talent around their roster. Their defense is solid. Their offense, even if you don't count the quarterback, has some very solid pieces. And then Baker's not a bad quarterback. He's not like an elite guy who'll go out there and win you games himself, but he's a capable quarterback. And I think you can win games with him. And it's starting 0-2 against Cleveland, who I've said I don't think is a very good team. And then to the Giants last week, they're going to have to do something. I don't know about firing the head coach this early into the season, but better late than never, I guess. They're going to have to do something to fix it. Tom went with the Saints. I went with the Saints, and Jose also went with the Saints to make it another three-way pick. Again, not speaking for them. I assume they agree in some capacity with me, but also I forgot to change the team. I reused the slides, but just changed the logos and the name at the bottom. So forgive me on that part. So yeah, the Saints, I feel like this should be an easy one, and I see them winning this one. And then we have Ravens at Patriots. I don't like the Patriots this year. I think I said that very early on in the season. I think they could be one of the worst teams in football. Mac Jones, I think he's a good quarterback. He's like a Kirk Cousins kind of guy. I think he can be better than Kirk, but I don't think he'll ever be elite. I've said that before. I've gotten flamed on Twitter by Patriots fans for saying that. It makes sense, but I think he's just like a very good but won't ever be great kind of guy. His ceiling's just not that high. I know they're really well coached by Bill Belichick, but they just don't really have a lot of pieces on that roster that will make them compete in games. So I don't really know what the direction they're going in, because it seems like they're like a rebuild but not rebuilding kind of a thing. And on the other side of the field, you have the Baltimore Ravens, who I knew were coming off a pretty defeating loss last week against Miami. But I'm still standing by. I think the Ravens are one of the best teams in the AFC. I think that they're going to win the division. And I think that Lamar Jackson has had a great year so far. And I think it's pretty easy where I'm going with that one. I am going with the Baltimore Ravens. That team is just so good. I know they lost to Miami in a pretty disheartening fashion, and it makes you lose some confidence in that defense. But I don't know. I got a gut feeling about the Ravens this year. I almost made them my Super Bowl pick, but I think that they can be super, super good. And the Patriots, like I said, I think they're a relatively bad team. So I'm going to go with the Ravens here. Tom also with the Ravens, and Jose also with the Ravens to make it another three-way agreement. Yeah, like I said, we're going to have quite a few of those, sadly. I guess it's probably the best week to do that whenever there's no one to really debate me for anything. It's better if we just agree on all of them. I promise there are some disagreements, so just bear with us. For the Lions at the Vikings, I'm very high on the Vikings. I've made that known. I think that they're a good team. They looked really bad week 2 against Philly. It was in Philly on Monday night. But Kirk Cousins also is awful in prime time. I think that's been a known thing. I don't know why he's so bad in prime time. But luckily for them, this is not a primetime game, which might be beneficial for Kirk Cousins. But the Lions also looked very good so far this year. They played that same Eagles team in week 1 and only lost by a field goal. And then it kind of got closer at the end, but they kind of had a very good game. They kind of won it all the way through against the Washington Commanders, and they looked really good in that game. I really like the team is obviously buying into Dan Campbell, his philosophy when it comes to coaching. Just being the more gritty, tough team. And so, when I was making my pick for this game, it was honestly a toss-up because, like I said, I'm high on the Vikings. I see them basically neck and neck with the Packers a toss-up if they win the division or not. But the Lions have just looked so good, so I didn't know where to go. But I will start with Tom. He picked the Detroit Lions to win this game. I really want to hear his reasoning for this one, which sadly I don't get to. But, maybe Tom, he said his thing last week where he finished watching Hard Knocks and seems like they can't lose now. Makes sense. I haven't seen Hard Knocks. Maybe once I watch it, my opinion will change. But I really like the Lions this year. I think, honestly, they could make a case if they win this game to maybe win the division this year, which is very bizarre to say given that they have Jared Goff at quarterback. And as for my pick, I did go with the Vikings along with Jose. I feel like I had so much confidence in them in the beginning of the year. I'm not going to let one game completely throw that away and start picking them to lose every week. But I like the Vikings this year, and I think that they're going to have a bounce back game. I think Kevin O'Connell is going to figure out what went wrong last week and turn it around and have a good game. And then we have the Eagles at the Washington Commanders, which I kind of talked about both of these teams a little bit earlier. The Eagles, I think, are making a case for being the best team in the NFC. They're at least up there. They look really good. When you go up against a receiver like Justin Jefferson and you put, Darius Slay is a good cornerback. When you match them up and he completely shuts down debatably the best receiver in football, that's pretty insane. And I think you can beat anyone if you can do that week in and week out. And then Jalen Hurts, I will admit that I was very wrong on Jalen Hurts. Last season I was like, I don't really see it in him. I don't see like the it factor. And then when we did our quarterback rankings, I think I had him in the 20s, which I don't really want to go back and talk about. And then even in the our playoff predictions, I'm pretty sure I said something along the lines of my biggest question with the Eagles is if Jalen Hurts can be a good quarterback. He has shown this far into the season, Jalen Hurts has it. He has the it factor. His improvement from college to the pros and even just every year in the pros is insane. And Jalen Hurts, I think, can be a franchise guy if he hasn't even proved that already. Jalen Hurts has looked really good this season. I think if the Eagles keep playing like this, he can make his case for an MVP, which is bizarre given how low I was on him. But like I said, I admit I was wrong. Jalen Hurts is that guy. And I think he's going to carry this team to some places. I think that they might even make a playoff push later on in the season. But again, that's a later point. The Commanders, I'm not high on. I don't really like picking them to win because you never know what Carson Wentz you're going to get. If you get good Carson Wentz, probably a pretty good chance they win the game. If you get the bad Carson Wentz, probably a good chance they lose it. And you never know because Carson Wentz is the most inconsistent quarterback I've ever seen. So I don't really know, I don't know when's a good place to pick them. I'm at, me and Jose are out of the Survivor picks thing. So, my pick for the Washington may have been week 18 as just a toss-up because I didn't know when to pick Carson Wentz. So I know that makes it pretty obvious. I went with the Philadelphia Eagles. Tom also went with the Eagles. And Jose also went with the Eagles to make it another three-way agreement. I don't think any of us are very high on the Commanders. I think that we're all pretty low on Carson Wentz. And I feel like the Eagles, I know it's a road game and the division rival, but I feel like the Eagles, they should very much win this game, without a doubt. Next up, we got the Chiefs at the Colts, which the Chiefs have been one of the best teams in football. They look pretty dang good. And then the Colts have looked like one of the worst teams in football, which is another thing that I have been very wrong on this far. I don't even really know what the problem is with the Colts. I didn't watch but the ends of the week 1 game and the week 2 game. I didn't watch it all because I was in New Orleans at the stadium, so I wasn't going to be watching the game on my phone or anything. But they got blown out and shut out by the Jaguars, who a lot of people thought were probably the worst team in that division, looked like the best. So I don't really know what's going on with that. But the Colts looked bad. They have looked bad. And they're going to have to turn it around, which unluckily for them, they are playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who look like, one of the best teams in football. So not a good week for them to trying to turn it around. I have, I know upsets happen, but this is one of those ones where I just don't see an upset. The Colts haven't looked good on either side of the ball. and the Chiefs have looked great on both sides of the ball. I don't see a Colts win here. Neither does Tom, and neither does Jose. I know this isn't the most entertaining thing to see us all agree on everything, but I don't see anyone picking the Colts to win this game other than maybe Colts fans, or if you want to be pretty bizarre with an upset. Next up, we have the Houston Texans at my Chicago Bears, which, Jose is a Texans fan. I am a Bears fan. So wherever this goes, there's going to be a lot of trash talk after this week, and hopefully it's in my favor. The Bears, I don't think, are a good team. I think they're very I don't know where I would tier them at. I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're good. I think they're somewhere in that average team. I like I've said, I've compared them, and I like to compare them to last year's Lions, where they didn't have a lot of talent on the roster, but the players bought into the coach's philosophy, and they were competitive in every game. They went out there and they would compete, and that's all you can ask for a team. That didn't really happen in the Nagy era. We either just won or got blown out. There wasn't really an in between. But I don't know. I could be the bias in me, but I think the Bears are still a better team than the Texans. Fields looked bad last week, but Fields, he's one of those guys who literally is the first one in, last one out kind of guys when it comes to training and practice. He got so upset about our loss to Green Bay last week. He started waking up an hour earlier at I think it was 5:45 in the morning to watch film for that extra hour, which is I know a lot of athletes do that, so to hang on to that little thing is kind of dumb. But I think Fields is gonna be the franchise guy. As you can tell, I'm a big Fields guy. I think he's gonna be the franchise guy, and I think that this is gonna be one of those games. He's gonna have a bounce back, and he's gonna show all the people who just kind of all the Bears fans who just turn their backs on him that he's gonna be that guy, and he's gonna prove it to you. He's had a rough start to the season, but week 1 he played in the monsoon, and week 2 he played against the Super Bowl contender. I think this week 3 against the Houston Texans, he's going to show that he's a lot better than what he has shown. And I think that the Chicago Bears are going to get the win here. Tom also picked the Bears, and surprisingly, Jose also picked the Bears, which threw me off. I texted him whenever he sent me the picks and I was making the slideshow, and he had said something along the lines of how the Texans have played. He doesn't feel like they can get a win right now. Which I was hoping this would be one of the disagreements of me and Jose's, because the whole Texans Bears fans bias here. But he went with the Bears. I'm not going to complain. As much Bears love as we can get, I will take. So yeah, it's another 3-way agreement with the Chicago Bears on this one. Next up, we have the Jaguars at the LA Chargers. I really like the Jaguars this year. I had picked them in week 1 to win, and they looked ugly to start, and then they kind of got back into the game late, barely lost to the Commanders, and then last week they shut out the Colts, and obviously the week when I didn't pick them. So I'm hoping this isn't under the Raiders situation from last year, where every time I picked them to win, they lost, and every time I picked them to lose, they won. Not what I'm hoping for, but it could happen. Tom has the Chargers, I have the Chargers, and Jose has the Chargers. So if it's the case, then the Jaguars are looking pretty good for this week. Make your bets on them. But I like Trevor Lawrence. I like the direction that the team's going in. He looks like Trevor Lawrence is kind of getting more comfortable in the scheme, in the offense, and they look pretty good. I think that they make a case to win the division, which if that's the case, Tom's Coach of the Year pick looks really good. But at the same time, I think the Chargers are one of the best teams in football. This would be a good team to pick as the upset would be the Jaguars, because Herbert's still a little banged up, which sucks for me because he's my fantasy quarterback, which my fantasy team is cursed. I think week 1, the leading scorer in all of the league was playing me, and in week 2, the leading scorer of all the league was playing me, because I'm the most unlucky human being in the entire world. But with Joe Herbert banged up, I think the Jaguars maybe stand a good chance, but I still want to go with the Chargers here. That defense is very improved. Brandon Staley, as strange of a coach as he is sometimes, and some of his decision making, he's still a good coach, and he's a good defensive coach. And I think that they're going to make things difficult for Trevor Lawrence. And I think Trevor Lawrence might have a bad game this week. With that being said, I'm not saying that, he's a bad quarterback, but this is a good defense. It's a good, well-coached team. I think he might have a bad week, and I'm going to give the Chargers the win on this one. Next up, we have the Rams at the Cardinals. But the Cardinals have looked better this far into the season because the Rams week 1 looked bad, and then week 2 they looked good up until the end. They blew that giant lead to the Falcons, which if anyone's blowing a lead to the Falcons, you know it can never be pretty. But I can't bet against my guy Cooper Kupp. I just can't. It's impossible for me, especially I'm not high on the Cardinals, like I've said. I don't think the Rams have been good this far, but they will turn it around, and the Rams are my team to pick to win this game. I don't really know what the deal is. I don't know why that they are looking so bad this far. And the Cardinals, I mean, looked bad all except for like a quarter and overtime this season. So, like, it's not like either team have been really great this year at all. And Tom actually picked the Cardinals. Jose agreed with me with the Rams. Another one where I'd like to hear Tom's point of view on things. I could see the Cardinals winning this one, given it also is in Arizona, and this division always has weird teams win games. But I think the Rams are still the better team, and I think they'll turn it around. Stafford's going to get into the groove of things. They still have the best defensive player on the planet. They also have one of the best defensive backs in the entire NFL, and obviously they have Cooper Kupp. They have such a star-studded team. Depth is definitely their issue, but I feel like they don't have enough injuries at this point for depth to be the excuse. So they're going to have to turn things around, or else, it's going to be not looking super pretty for this season. And I think this is going to be a game where they're going to have a bounce back and prove that they're one of those still contending top teams in the NFL. Next up, we have the Packers at the Buccaneers. This one was another hard one for me to predict. I didn't really know the direction to go to. Obviously, I hate Green Bay as a Bears fan, but Green Bay is a good team. I don't think they're as good as they were last year, and last year I don't think they were as good as the year they were before. But, anything can happen when you have an elite quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers is still an elite quarterback. I don't really know what's going to happen exactly with that team with the lack of receivers they have, but they still have a very solid team. And just lucky for them when they're playing the Bucs this week, Mike Evans got suspended for his little fight with Marshawn Lattimore last week. Julio Jones is banged up. Chris Godwin's banged up. So he doesn't have Tom Brady's not going to have a lot of weapons either in this game. So it basically comes to the supporting cast when it comes to running backs and defense. And I think the Packers have better running backs, Aaron Jones, so I'm not high on. He kind of proved me wrong a little bit, shut me up with his performance against the Bears last week. And I really like A.J. Dillon. I think he's a great, he's a running back that'll wear down your defense and make it easier later in the game. And I really like Leonard Fournette, though. I wasn't really high on him as like a workhorse, back to get a lot of carries, but he's kind of done a really good job with that in the with the Bucs offense. But the Bucs defense, I think, is a little bit better than the Packers defense this far in the season. And I think Tom agrees with me, and he's going to go with the Bucs in this one. I have the Bucs, and Jose has the Bucs, which I feel like this makes it seem like none of us think the Packers have a chance. Not the case. I think the Packers are a good team. Packers could very well win this game. I also think it being in Tampa definitely helps the Buccaneers. And something Tom has said and something I will say as well, you don't bet against Brady. It's very rare when I'm going to bet against him. It's going to have to be like the worst scenario for Brady. And I think the Bucs are going to walk out of this one with a W. Next up, we have the Falcons and the Seahawks, which a lot similar to the Texans-Bears game. It's two very not good teams. So, it could go either way. The Falcons have honestly looked better this year than I thought. They, they had a lead, which they blew to the Saints week 1, which was, in Falcons fashion. And in week 2, they came back against the defending Super Bowl champ Rams, and they looked very good. I think they need to get Kyle Pitts more involved in the offense, is my big criticism of that offense. But Drake London looks like a number one receiver for that offense. Cordell Patterson's a great weapon to have. And Marcus Mariota, I don't think he's a franchise guy, but as a bridge quarterback, I think he's done a pretty solid job. And for the Seahawks, I don't think that they're a very good football team, but, they have outplayed the talent level that they have. Week 1, they beat the Broncos. And then last week, they did lose to the 49ers when Garoppolo came back in. So, neither team looks great in the win-loss category. The Falcons are 0-2 and the Seahawks are 1-1. But with that being said, I actually am going with the 0-2 team, the Atlanta Falcons. I just think that they have a higher ceiling than the Seahawks do. I like Mariota more than I like Geno Smith, and Mariota has done a good job getting the ball out. I think if they get Kyle Pitts involved, that they won't be a good team or anything close to it, but they will be an exciting team to watch on offense. And Tom and Jose both agree with me, and we are going with all three of us are going with the Atlanta Falcons in this one. And then we have the 49ers at the Broncos. Excuse me. 49ers at the Broncos. I'm not high on the Broncos anymore in the season. I wasn't really high on them to begin with. I didn't have them being a playoff team, but they look worse than I could have ever imagined. Like I said, Nathaniel Hackett looks like a bad coach, which is never a good thing. He reminds me so much of Matt Nagy, which I know it's very early on to his coaching career, but it's very bizarre, the similarities that they have. As for the 49ers, I think that going from Lance to Garoppolo maybe lowers their ceiling, but it raises their floor a substantial bit, which, even the raising or lowering their ceiling is very debatable. I think Garoppolo is the better quarterback to go with. Like I've said, Trey Lance, I think, is very raw, and I think he needs another year to develop, which this is not the best situation to have to take another year to develop with an injury. I don't want to hate on Trey Lance because he's with the injury. He can't really play to back up his game or anything like that. I never like to wish injuries on anyone. But in a positive sense of it, it might not be the worst thing to happen to him. He gets another year to develop with an NFL, team. And I think that'll be good for him in the long run of things. And I think Garoppolo is a good quarterback, and I think he's still the better option here. Which Tom, I think he had said in one of our Thursday episodes of the teams that started off with a loss that has the best chance at a Super Bowl. And he had said something about Trey Lance getting benched and for Garoppolo, and Garoppolo bringing them to a Super Bowl, which it wasn't benched for play reasons, but it is for injury reasons. So you would think that he would go with the 49ers, but he actually went with the Broncos here. I don't really know what his thought process is, if it's just he wants to go with the upset. They're playing at home, but I don't know. The Broncos haven't looked good enough for me to pick them over really any team this far. They look really ugly. That was a very ugly win against the Texans. I don't want to just hate on Tom's pick. They still do have Russell Wilson, so you never want to count them out. But the Broncos they're one of my most disappointing teams for the year this far, without a doubt. But me and Jose agree once again on the San Francisco 49ers. I just think that they have a better team. And then I think with Garoppolo coming back, I think that's going to be an improvement. And then Kittle, I don't know for sure, but if Kittle plays, I think the Broncos linebacker core is not very good, and Kittle will have a very good game. If you have Kittle in fantasy, I do not take that with more than a grain of salt, because my fantasy, is never good for some reason. So Kittle will probably have the worst game of his career for whatever reason. And then next up, we have the Cowboys at the Giants, which Cowboys at Giants everyone would lean Cowboys. Dak's out. It's Cooper Rush. So it makes you want to go with the Giants. But Cooper Rush is, 2-0 in his career as a starter, and that is against the Minnesota Vikings last year, Cincinnati Bengals this year. So those aren't bottom of the barrel teams there. But I know he hasn't looked great. I think it's been more to their defense. Micah Parsons has looked fantastic this season. He's making his case for Defensive Player of the Year. Wouldn't be a surprise to me if he won that. But with that being said, I know I've been clowning on the Giants quite a bit. I really didn't like their team last year, and I clowned on them with Daniel Jones this year. I do have the Giants winning. I don't think it's because the Giants are a good team, because I think they could be a good team if they had a quarterback, but Daniel Jones is just that bad to me that he will not make them a good team. They have pieces around him, but he's just that bad. It doesn't matter. But I think it's more so a Cowboys with Cooper Rush. It is very hard for me to pick a team led by Cooper Rush to win, regardless of how many wins he's going to rack up while he's their starter. And Tom and Jose also agree, and it's a three-way agreement for the Giants as well, which I guess it wraps it up. I didn't realize that was the last game. Yeah, the Giants. I really want them to get a good quarterback. I know Giants fans and me and on Twitter have always been in arguments because they had our first round pick last year, so they all just hated on Justin Fields and whatnot. So I got a little bitter. But I want to see the Giants succeed. I want to see them get a quarterback because I think they have the pieces around a quarterback to be a very good team. And I think if they get like a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young in the draft next year, or if they make a big splash trade for a quarterback, they could be a very, very competitive team for quite a while. And so that does wrap it up. Hopefully I did a decent job at this. Like I said, I don't really do the whole solo things anymore. So it was my first time in a while. So it may not have been the best, but hopefully I did a good enough job. But to wrap it up, I will say we have our socials here. Twitter, we have CoolSportsGuy. We have Instagram, which is the CoolSportsGuy. And we have our Facebook page, facebook.com/CoolSportsGuy. We also have a YouTube channel, which this usually goes directly to our Facebook and our YouTube, which the YouTube is just CoolSportsGuy. Which if you go down there, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, I try to do a good job of responding to the comments. I know I don't get to it every single time, but I like to have interaction with the viewers. I like to debate sports, so anyone who wants to have any kind of conversation, sports, comments of either any of those things, any of the social medias, and I will try my best to respond to them. With that being said, I guess I'll just wrap it up here. And I guess since I'm the only one, I can kind of praise the Bears. So, I hope the Bears have a good game. I'm hoping, and let's just hope for a great week 3, no injuries from any teams. And I guess that's it. Y'all have a